We've had some really warm days in this last week or so. One of my favorite things about spring is the return to walking barefoot in the grass. Does anybody else like that? Yeah. I admit I've already done some this year. Being able to wiggle my toes into the cool grass, to feel grounded and connected to my surroundings, and to feel grounded once again after a long winter of cold and dark that at times, I admit, sucked the life right out of me. Tonight we hear from John's Gospel, chapter 13. It begins the second half of John's Gospel. John will spend the next 5 chapters preparing us for meaning and action of the crucifixion, resurrection, and ascension. For John, the emphasis of this story is on a new commandment, mandatum, which is Latin for commandment, from which Maundy, Thursday, is derived. The focus then of tonight's gospel reading is on what it means to live out this new commandment, which is based on, grounded in, if you will, Jesus' relationship with his disciples and with his Father. Jesus will call his disciples into an even deeper understanding of his mission for them through an act of service. Our text this evening, and in fact all the passion narrative found in John's Gospel, are summed up in the opening theme. Now before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. With the scene set, the festival of Passover, John tells us 2 things we need to know. First, Jesus is in control of the situation. What will happen next will be necessary and a part of God's work, a fulfillment of Jesus' earthly mission. Second, Jesus' actions and mission are based in love. And that notion is expressed again here. Having loved his own, he loved them to the end. The Passover feast is the opportunity for Jesus to share a message with his disciples. Jesus models sacrificial love for his disciples, and so he models what he expects of them. Jesus models for them this pattern of service, humility, caring, and bearing burdens with others. And Jesus commands those who would be his followers to serve each other for his sake. From the cross, Jesus will intentionally make this kind of connection for his mother and a disciple who is not a blood relative when he tells them that they are now family. Mother, this is your son. Son, this is your mother. And so Jesus wraps a cloth around his waist and gathers the water and the basin and begins washing his disciples' feet. This work of washing feet would be normally done by a servant in the household, or at best, it might be a self-service activity. Peter challenges Jesus' offer to wash his feet, but can you blame Peter for being confused? He doesn't expect a Messiah who comes in humiliation, who lowers himself to being a servant at his own gathering. But it is only when Peter revises his expectations of God that he can fully understand and receive the hidden humility, Christ the servant before him. I'd like to dig into this notion of humility a bit. For Jesus, humility is lived out in serving, in his emptying of himself. If you remember last week, we heard the Christ hymn from Philippians. Humility is lived out as one willing to suffer for all. Humility found in God's grace, made evident in the lowest expected way, with Jesus hanging on a cross. Surprisingly humble expressions of the most magnificent of gifts for us. Remember my appreciation for digging my toes into the grass? Humility finds its roots in the root meaning in the Latin word humus, meaning the dark organic material in soils produced by the decomposition thank you, of vegetable or animal matter, and essential to the fertility of the earth. Essential essential to the fertility of the earth, essential for life. Humility, it seems, is at the core of understanding what it means to live as one of Jesus' disciples. Once Peter understands what Jesus is trying to teach him, he offers his entire body, as Peter might. Washing feet isn't about washing feet per se. It's about being planted firmly in the humus, grounded, with a clear understanding of what it means to live out the gospel. In this act of foot washing, Jesus shares with his disciples and with us the key to living in the kingdom here on earth. Serving others is about here and now, not about the someday and somewhere. For John's gospel, salvation happens through God's embrace of a hostile world. If the disciples can grasp this central idea, if they can embrace this understanding of God, grace and salvation in this act of service, this washing of their feet, then they too may go into the world with the cleansing word Jesus offers. So what about us? Can we understand God's grace through Jesus hanging on a cross? Can we embrace the idea of a servant king? Can we be humble enough to accept the washing of our feet by our Savior? Can we embrace our own humility, feet squarely planted in the soil, and remain bold enough to wash someone else's feet? Understanding this kind of holy humility is central to our lives of faith and our pursuit of discipleship. Being willing to set aside our own importance for the sake of others could mean listening to someone who needs to be heard, sitting by the bedside of one who is ill, reading a book to a child, or volunteering at church or in a community. Can we understand that life is gained by giving and not taking? By serving and not by ruling? All of these are important ways of responding to others that is at the center of Jesus' command to the disciples and to us this evening. And so I leave you with these words before we offer to wash your feet. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another.